What up? What up? The man Sean P coming in live. That's right. You see me coming in live with another live experience. This time is a little bit different. We are now officially going over to the YouTube and the podcast side of the house. Long time coming. We finally here, man. And to kick it off, my first guest on the YouTube side, my man, Black Man with Books in the building. How you doing, my brother?
What's up, man? I appreciate you, man. Good to chat with you and chop it up and just talk about all things books and personal
Yes,
development,
yes.
man. Good to see you again and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man, always an honor. And you know, we live in a space where it's not that many black guys in this space. So
Mhm.
whenever I see another brother doing what I'm doing, engaging in these books,
Mhm.
working on your self help and working on bettering yourself as a man, I gotta reach out.
Yeah,
I gotta at least say what's up. I gotta at least inbox, like just give a salute, like just let you know, like I see you. You know what I'm saying? So this is
yeah,
kind of
I
one of those.
appreciate that, bro. And likewise, I told you a while ago, man. It's always refreshing to see other black men that that are not not just reading, but like really reading. Like they make it a daily habit. So it's good connecting with you, man.
Yeah, yeah. So with that being said, let me start it off like this, right? Like I love hearing another black man journey of how they started this whole reading thing. So
Mhm.
if you don't mind, give us a little trip down memory lane on how you first got engaged. Like, you know what? I like this. I enjoy this. I want to do it more. How did that start? That light bulb.
Man, it started back in 2018, but before I get to 2018, I'll go back even further that, I actually found an old journal from like 2012, 2013, and I wrote in it that I wanted to be a reader. And every year for New Year's, I used to make a resolution like, "Hey, I'm gonna read more this year. I'm gonna read more this year." And as with all a lot of resolutions with a lot of people, I started off January good, and then I would stop. So I always had the desire to become a reader, but it actually came out of necessity of sorts. Back in 2018, I got into therapy, and when I went to my first session, my therapist, he gave me a recommendation for a book, and I went home excuse me, and I ordered it, and I immediately I read it, and that was probably the first book that I had read cover to cover since college. And from there I just kept reading and reading, and I used it as a supplement to my therapy, but then it soon morphed into a daily habit and into a lifestyle. So even post therapy, after getting out of therapy, I kept the reading habit. I kept reading, and even now I read probably at least an hour to an hour and a half minimum a day. Sometimes I could, I think I went for like 2 years without a TV. Well, I just all I did was read. If in my leisure time, I used to, kind of Netflix on my computer, but I purposefully just want to indate myself with books and reading, man. So that's how it started. Off of being a supplement to therapy. You muted, bro.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. There you go.
Yeah, all of us have that one particular book that sent us to another stratosphere, if you will. What was that one book for you, if you remember what that even was?
Yeah, the book that started my reader's journey was is called Gifts and Imperfection by Brene Brown. And it's a wonderful book just about, self love, just accepting who you are, accepting your flaws, your good, your bad, your ugly. And that book was the one that started my journey. However, the pig, part, well, that was one, but 1A, I would say, is also the autobiography of Malcolm X. I think, probably 9 or 8 months into my reader's journey, I picked up that book and I read it, and I saw the transformation that Malcolm X had, to go from a criminal, to a criminal that could barely read to, being able to speak at Oxford and, Harvard, and just to have that intellect and to be able to communicate. And that was the inspiration that, you know, helped fuel my reader's journey. So I would think those two books were very instrumental. Like I said, you know, Gifts and Perfection got me started, but the autobiography of Malcolm X was the one that it was like, yo, there's something in this reading thing. That showed me the power of reading.
There's something to be said for Malcolm X. Like for so many years, we talked to a lot of black men in particular. Something about
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X is always the light bulb, like the catalyst that just
Yeah,
spins it for
yeah,
some reason. Man.
it's an instrumental book, and I always recommend it, and I speak highly. I think I actually may read it again here soon. I've read it
Yeah.
twice at this point, but yeah, it's just something that, like as I said, his story, just to see where he came from to what he was, at the time of his death, and he attributes that all to reading. So
Yeah. Let me encourage you on something, my brother. Go and find the autobiography of Malcolm X, the audio version. It came out recently
okay,
because Lawrence Fishburne did the audio.
oh okay,
Lawrence Fishburne killed it. Cause like yourself, I've read the actual book more than one time. I've
hmm
done buddy reads and book clubs, but Lawrence Fishburne audio book, his acting ability and the way he's able to have these
yeah,
inflections on his
his
voice,
voice, yeah.
he's able to really bring certain things to life to where certain parts of the book hit differently
hmm
whenever he's reading it. So I always encourage anybody, if you can find the
Man,
audio version, man, get the audio, man.
man, I appreciate that. I'm gonna definitely add that to my list. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I'm more than sure you probably have some buddies that hit you up sometime in the inbox or in person, and they're like they see you reading and it's inspiring to them. And they might ask you, man, I want to start reading. What should I read? Or they might want to ask you a question like that. What's like 5 books you would advise an early, just starting to read person? What's like 5 go-to books? Like, man, start with this. What would you say?
Definitely the autobiography of Malcolm X. I will put that on the
Okay.
list. It's a book called Atomic Habits. That this is it's
Yes,
by James Clear. It just talks about implemented habits, and I think everybody can benefit from that book. Ooh, let's see. I would also go with, man. I just read a great one, Battle Cry by Jason Wilson.
I
That's
love that book.
excellent book. Actually,
Love that
both of
book.
his books. I would do, 3 and 4. Battle Cry and Cry Like a Man. Those are excellent books that I recommend that every man reads, especially every black man, just because they're written so, he was very raw, and you could tell he wrote it specifically for black men in particular. And the fifth book I would say is The Way of the Superior Man. That was an excellent book.
Yeah,
That's one of those
right.
books that I wish I would have read when I was like 18 years old, because
Yeah,
it just, it answered a lot of questions as far as I always had as a man, as far as, being a man, and it's the thoughts and how I behave, and, this the art of being a man, and capturing that masculinity energy that, those are the 5 books I would recommend.
yeah.
Autobiography of Malcolm X, Atomic Habits, Cry Like a Man, uh, Battle Cry, both of those by Jason Wilson, and The Way of the Superior Man.
Let me let me tell you the story about the superior man, right? So here in Louisiana, in Lafayette area, a brother named Devin Thibodeau, right?
Okay.
He started black men reading the book club here in Lafayette, right? In
hmm
person book club, not online. And we went to the Benoit Art Gallery downtown Lafayette, and you had a transgenerational experience where the young guy might be 16, 17 years old. Then you got the guys in the middle. Then you got the OG in the shop. He probably pushing
Man,
late 50s, right?
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
So that particular book was my first time coming to the book club at that point. And like chapter for chapter, all of us giving our take on
hmm
every issue in the book, from our point of view, from our generation, right?
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
dating and households and just
You
your
had the
daily
full spectrum. Yeah, the full spectrum of
full
age.
spectrum of you got a man been married for a long time with a wonderful family. You got guys that's at my time I was probably 5, 6 years married, and then the young guys still dating that dating phase.
Yeah. So they get that
You
perspective.
got the whole arc of possibility and how you want to be with your household and with your spouse. So it was a wonderful experience that kicked off a long time before the pandemic, of course, killed
Yeah,
everything. But
yeah,
that particular book is something that we always talk about to this day amongst those guys, because that one book set everything off.
yeah, yeah. I like I said, I wish I would have read it when I was like 18 or
Me
19.
too. Me too. Me too.
Better
Likewise.
late than
Likewise.
never. So,
Yes. Yes. So let me ask you this question, right? You're big on self help,
hmm
and I noticed in the bookstagram space, self help isn't really like a real prevalent genre of reading. So tell me, what attracted you to self help, and like what's some of the benefits of you for you of reading self help?
man, it's funny you should say that. I always think about that, but like as I said, I started reading to supplement my therapy sessions because, like I said, I dove head into therapy. So I was like, look, I want to, I was at a point in life where I knew I had to change, to change the way I think, to change the way I was behaving, and get a handle of my emotions. So majority of the books I read early on was all in the self help space. Transitioning out of therapy, I still continue to read self help as a supplement and continue to build better habits, to build mindsets, and also at that point, I think just my curiosity on the human behavior and emotions and habit setting had kicked in. So I think for me, and also he's coming back to me. I often forget this that I have a degree in psychology, so I always have had a knack for human behavior and this understanding how people work. So I think all of those paired is why a majority of my books have been in the self help space. And it's funny because I just realized recently, probably in the last, I would say maybe 4 to 6 months, my reading habits have kind of changed. I'm slowly starting to phase out of the self help and the psychology and the habits books, and I'm getting more into like I'm reading more fiction. I'm getting more into spirituality. And I actually just, for the month of February upcoming, I purposefully am going to read, all, author black books by black authors or dealing with black history. So I noticed that, I think I had a moment where I was like, I'm not reading as much self-help as I once was. Cause at one point it was, 100% self-help. And now I think it's probably more like 75%. I'm slowly starting to transition. And it's funny because I heard Reggie Reed's, the same, I saw a few interviews and I think it may have been on your platform. He said the same thing kind of happened to him where he started in the self-help space, but as his reader's journey developed and evolved over the years, he slowly got away from that. And I think as I said, I'm noticing that. And just to piggyback that, you're right that I when I got on Bookstagrammer, I was like, man, it's I see some people read self-help but not as many, and that's, and I appreciate it now. I think at first I was a little like, man, is anybody reading like me? However, I was in my infancy stage of being a reader, but now I realize that nobody's going to read the same. We all have different knacks, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different things that make us tick, so nobody's going to have the same exact, hey, book for book.
Yeah, definitely, man. Interesting. Both of us being in psychology. I didn't know you were also a psych major, right?
Yeah,
That's really
man.
amazing fact to think about. But I want to comment on a couple of things you just said. First, that transition to the fictional side, right? I mean, for a lot of us nonfiction readers, I'm speaking for me. I can't speak for everybody. I think some nonfiction readers feel like if I take the time and the money to sit down and read, I
Mm-hmm.
want to get something out of it. I want to have something I can actually use.
Mm-hmm.
So in self-help, it's pretty clear evident. You're getting most times like step by step something to do. You're getting something to implement right away. You got systems, you got programs, you got something you can put in your life, right? Relationship, personal, whatever it might be, finances, right? But in the fictional space, via Reggie and Achille
Mm-hmm.
and Larry Reeds, I can name various people on Bookstagram where I've learned through them how much they get from fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Help with relation, your personal, family, trauma, et cetera, et cetera. So I think when you mature more in reading
Mm-hmm.
and you can get those things from fiction, it opens up another gateway to
Yeah.
read more
Yeah.
and read differently
Yeah.
and read differently.
And like I said, that's one of my and that's one of my goals for this year. I don't really set goals, but one of my things that I want to implement, I want to read more fiction. Like I want to get into Baldwin. I was actually checking out a few pages today, few pages where people recommend Baldwin because I'm like, you know what? It's time. Like I feel like I've read way more than enough, self-help that now I can implement and try new things. And if I like it, I like it. If not, no big deal. So
You just said something important right there, right? Where it's like even myself being this is self help for like a long stretch of time.
mhm.
At a certain point, like in my car riding around to this day, actually, I don't play music in the car. I'm always playing like a lecture or a podcast or something
Yeah,
to learn, right? When I'm at work, I have certain times where I got certain things to do that take me about 45 minutes to an hour to do it. I'm playing a podcast while I'm doing those things
yeah.
around the building, right? So after years of doing that though, I don't have to literally read as many self-help books as before.
Mhm.
It's like you start learning things like muscle memory,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
After a while shooting a jump shot, I'm not thinking about spread the fingers, elbow in, bend the knee. You catch the ball and just
right,
so I ain't gotta play Les Brown all day or Tony
right.
Robbins or Eric Thomas. I don't need to play them for hours at a time like I did in the beginning. But that's a part of your growth in the progression. And that's anything in life,
Yeah,
not just
life.
this. But
Yeah, I agree.
I'm noticing in this in reading, when you spend a certain amount of time in a certain space, you get that muscle memory. Like fiction for me, right? When I started my journey, I did 10 years of fiction.
Oh wow.
So even whenever I go to write a short story now, people are like, man, where'd they come from?
Yeah,
But they don't know I've had
that
10
compound
years of
interest.
reading nothing but fiction.
Yeah,
Eric Jerome Dickey, Zane, Sister Soldier, Omar Tyree, Walter Moore. You can name different people that I just spent everything they wrote, I want to read it.
yeah,
At a certain point, it's like, okay, I'm off of that. But whenever I want to go back to it, that pocket, I can go back to that pocket when I want.
yeah,
It's
yeah. You evolve, and like you said, you took more risk, and it's like now you're like, now let me piggyback in this actual follow up real quick. Right now, what would you say your fiction and nonfiction ratio is? If you had to, is it 50-50? Is it 60-40 or what?
it's probably like 80-20, only because my personal interests are like African studies, black studies, social justice. Uh, I love biographies, bro. The past like four to
Yeah,
five years, I love biographies, autobiographies, memoirs. I love those.
yeah, me
So because of
too.
that love of that, I spend a whole lot more time still in the non-fictional space versus the fiction. But like lately, I've been more open to the fiction, man. Like I've been reading, believe it or not, Star Wars a lot.
Really?
I don't know where that came from. The past like year and a half, I got curious. Like this Star Wars buzz just hit me, and now I'm finding myself getting more books on the different characters and getting
Yeah,
deep
because
into
it's a
the
whole universe, man. That's pretty dope.
world building and everything, right? But like I said earlier, being around Reggie and Akila and these guys and hearing the way they talk about fictional books,
Hmm.
like if you was around a couple years ago or not, they was doing 3 and 4 hour Instagram live
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
Oh,
I remember when they first started. I
I'm
was
like,
yeah.
y'all doing 4 hours on a fictional book and maintaining 50, 60 people in the room
Hmm.
the whole time. Cause they just going back and forth, pulling these nuggets and these gems, and man, they're referring to other things. I was just always amazed by that.
Maze, yeah, man. I
So
agree.
whenever I get amazed by something, I want to do it. I want to learn it. Don't get envious. Don't get jealous. Do the work, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
like, wow. So that really sparked me to want to, like myself, I want to read more Toni Morrison. Like you said, James Baldwin. The brother Raymond here on Instagram has a challenge going on this year for Zora Neilson Hurst. I want to
Okay.
read that. Cause
Yeah.
I've been wanting to read more Zora anyway. So him
It
doing the
gives you that
challenge only
excuse.
is
Yeah.
on accelerated. Right. So that's kind of where I am with it, personally.
Yeah, man, that's
Yeah,
dope, man. And like you said, they like you said, going back to Akil and Reggie. Like I remember when I first started really paying attention, I was like, man, these brothers read a lot of fiction. However,
yeah,
and I think at first I was intimidated, like, man, am I, like I said, as I said, I was infancy of my reading, and I was like, well, should I be reading like them? But now it's like, look, you read how you want to, and you can
yeah,
pick and
yeah,
choose, and everybody's gonna have a different set
yeah.
of books. As I said, nobody's going to be like, hey, I read 20 books. What 20 books did you read? And not like, yes, you may get 10 or 15, but nobody's going to have book for book what you read because we're all individuals and we all have different tastes and different interests, man. So, but it's good that, we get that variety on Bookstagram and Black Bookstagram of all over. So if like I said, if now that I know, like, look, I want to do fiction, I know where to go. I want to look at Black studies, I know where to go. So
It's a buffet, if you will, right? It's a buffet. And by the time being in Bookstagram, I learned so many nuances I never knew before.
mm-hmm.
Like, the genre of romance, for an example, romance. The average everyday person have no idea there are so many subgenres in romance.
Yeah.
Like probably 8 to 12 subgenres that unless you in that world, you probably won't even know it
No.
even exists. You
Yeah.
think it's an umbrella, like, oh, this is romance. Like, no, they got this kind and this kind and that kind, all these different tropes, all these different little nuances. Is like, I
Yeah.
find that interesting.
It's like a rabbit hole, man, and
It
that's
is.
and
It is.
and just to piggyback, that's also to add on is that's one thing I've also learned about paying attention to books and being in Bookstagram, and I'm in my fourth year now. It's like that they're like this. You're never gonna run out of books. There's books for every
No,
subject, every
not
kind of
possible.
genre, like any kind of thing you can kind of think of. It's like wow, like that's crazy that I never knew before a reader I was like, oh, it's just biographies, memoirs, self-help, and fiction. But once you crack open that seal, it's like, nah, fiction just isn't fiction. You could go any different way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like school, right? They have levels. Yeah, the 100 class, the 200 class. You got the advanced classes. Like it's like that. Like for example, Reggie real good at knowing what publishing company puts out what.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that because
Yeah,
in the past I never even paid attention to that.
yeah,
I just know I like Dr. Imani Perry. I'm gonna go get whatever she write. I'm going to get it. I never really was taking time to stop and look who published this. Reggie knows who publishes what and
yeah.
what. Back in the old days,
That's a gift, man. That is a true
in the
gift.
old days, in hip hop, right? In the old days, or that's Rough Rider,
Mm-hmm.
or that's Bad Boy, or that's Death Row,
Yeah,
that's
you
Rapper
knew the
Like.
sound, you knew
What
the
artists on
producers.
Reggie knows it like that. They know publishing dates.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, this came out in the 50s. Well, no, that came out in the 70s. Like, how you know that off your head? That's impressive, bro.
Yeah,
So that make you want to elevate your game. So now when I get a book, the first thing I do, copyright page.
yeah. When did it
Who
come
published
out?
it? When it came out. I'm just showing you how it started getting implemented.
Mm-hmm.
You see it and you admire it. Now it's the implementation phase.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sports. We was kids before they had YouTube. You see something on Sports Center, like, wow, okay, they did this, and you go in the backyard, and now you implement. You
Right.
try, you trying. So the same thing with the books. I look at it like that.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I agree 100%, man.
Yeah, yeah. Also, when it comes to fiction versus nonfiction, right? It's one of the biggest debates lately, in a fun way, a fun debate, right? And I made an analogy of the book world being like the gym world. How if you go to a local gym most times and just observe people for a while, you know there's a certain demographic coming to the gym, they go straight to the weights. They
Mm-hmm.
will never touch a treadmill. They will never go to a class. They go straight to the weights. Another class goes straight to the classes. They ain't touching no weight, ain't going to no treadmill, they going straight in that classroom, right? Another group goes straight for the cardio machines.
Man.
And so you'll see for years, these people only go to their particular area. They won't even co-mingle. They barely even talk. They
Yeah.
just going straight to their little,
Yeah, that's
and they feel like their thing is the thing.
That's a great analogy because you're right. Because some people are building for strength, some people trying to bulk up, some people trying to lose weight. Some, like you said, some people do the elliptical, the stair stepper. You know, he doing biceps, he doing legs, she doing,
But
everything. So you,
what I notice is like a person's point of entry, because you mentioned how you started in self help and now you branching off, right?
mm-hmm.
I started in fiction, I branched off.
Oh,
But like some people, your point of entry, you just stay there
yeah.
because you go to the gym and you lost that first 10 pounds doing this treadmill thing. I had to go on the treadmill
Mm-hmm.
because I had success there. Or I started lifting. I got a little compliment. My chest got bigger. My shoulders bigger. The girls like it at the club. Now I gotta go lift. I gotta go bitch.
Yeah.
Right? And you see how a person kind of get pigeonholed because you initially get on fire behind this certain fictional book or whatever it is. I gotta do
And you
this.
did. Yeah,
And
man.
you
I totally.
assume I don't like nonfiction. You haven't even tried it.
Mm-hmm.
You've only tried one kind of it, right? So the same thing with the fitness world. You try one fitness class, oh man, they tried to kill me in there. I ain't going up in there no more. You just cut the whole thing
Right.
off, right? But life is more like a pie, like a pizza pie, right?
Yeah,
Like
you take,
of
yeah.
these slices, every slice is important.
Mm-hmm.
No slice is more important than another slice. So for us to be well read, I think it's important for all of us to try to read all
Some,
of
yeah,
these slices, man.
yeah, different
Romance.
things.
I've been trying to read manga, trying to read comics, trying to read graphic novels. I literally read the physical newspaper the past 2 years. I train
Really?
myself. Yeah, I train myself when I travel, especially. Let's say it's a road trip like Christmas, right? We went to Texas. Me and my wife went to Texas. Yeah, like a 6 hour drive. If we got to stop to get gas or stop for the bathroom, I'm gonna get me a paper in that particular city the whole way.
Ah,
So I come back home after the trip. I got like 9 different papers from 9 different cities
man.
because I'm observing how is the news reported per
From different
place.
places, man. That's pretty. That's genius, bro. I never would have thought of that. Like, to kind of, you can kind of get a
My head,
perspective of like, look, if I lived here, what would the news look like? What's going on? What are the politics? What is the policy? Man, that's pretty dope, man.
back to that muscle memory conversation we had 5 minutes ago. As a writer, I think it's important to read good writing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of subconsciously I'm making my eyes see good paragraphs, see good sentences, see good word usage. I'm just trying to make my eyes touch this thing.
Yeah,
And maybe it will transmute over into my actual writing. That's the
yeah.
that's the actual thing.
Yeah, and like if you ever do fiction, you'll have a broader perspective, because you'll be able to pull from like, hey, I was in this county in Texas, and yeah, I could use that for like a backdrop or for inspiration, man. So it all one way or another, it's all connected and going to be utilized or be expressed in a certain way, man. So man, once again, that's
Yeah.
genius and kudos to you for having that idea because I never would have thought of that. I would have been like, I don't remember the last time I picked up a physical paper because I just been so, I didn't fell into the trap of, just reading the news online now. So,
And that's fine. So levels once again. So at first it
mhm,
was just read the paper. I trained myself for a year or two just to read the paper consistently. Now I want to get black press specifically.
mm-hmm,
So how I subscribe to New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, stuff like that. Now I want to unsubscribe from most of those. I want to subscribe to black press.
yeah,
My current mission is black press.
yeah, man, and get a perspective, man. That's dope.
'Cause I want to see how we report to each other,
Mm-hmm,
how we talk to each other. And also in my history studies, at every point in time, we had a large amount of black press,
yeah,
right? So I love studying back in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, the amount of black press they had at that time all across the nation, man, and how vital those papers were. That
yeah,
was like more than money back then.
yeah. And real quick, that reminds me, actually, somebody I follow, he just read a book called The Defender, the black paper out of Chicago. You may want to add that to your list
I
if
got
you
that
haven't.
book.
If you don't
About
have it,
700 pages
yeah, it's
thick.
a
I got
thick book.
it. I got it.
Yeah, and
People.
he posted it, and I was like,
People.
man,
I
I
got
didn't,
it 2
that
years ago.
he put it on my radar, and I was like, man, I need to look into that because I know I've heard of the Defender, I heard of the New Amsterdam Press, and I
Yep.
know it was
So
one
the
other paper that
Pittsburgh,
was, and
Pittsburgh
but
Terrier,
I know there
of
were
course,
multiple
the
ones, but those are the ones I know of. So
I've been around for a long time. The Pittsburgh Carrier, the Crisis. Most of these major guys had their own press, right? So
mm,
Marcus Garvey had his own press with the
yeah,
UNIA. See, all these major movements had press, right?
yeah,
Nation of Islam to this day, they still
that
got their
final
own press.
call, yeah,
To
yeah,
this day, it's online. You can get a physical copy in certain cities. They were still doing the final call. The Black Panther Party had the Panther Papers back in the day.
hmm
So just every iteration, they found the value in we got to have our own press, tell
our
our own
voice,
stories, educate our own people, right?
hmm
We see in the news today, back to press, what's going on in Florida right now. They're trying to ban all of these books
yeah, I saw
dealing
that
with
today.
African studies and whatnot, right? They don't want, they're trying to quiet these voices, man. That's why it's important for us to do this.
Yeah,
It's
man. Yeah,
important for
like
us
you
to tell
said,
these
it's
stories.
yeah to change the narrative and take back control. Take back control of the narrative.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Let's pivot a little bit, right? So you mentioned the self help. You mentioned, of course, being in therapy like myself, right? But first of all, what got you into the counseling space? What got you into the psychology space? Tell me that story, that journey.
Man, it started way back in high school, man. That I took a class randomly by psychology and I loved it. And that kind of just, whet my appetite. And, when I went to undergrad, when I went to college, I started off as biology and I realized I didn't like that. And I was like, what is it that I really liked? And I always liked trying to figure things out. I was always inquisitive. I always wanted to figure people out. So it was natural that I got into psychology. So that's how it got into it, man. As I said, I always had a knack for just figuring out people. Why do we, and thinking. I was always a thinker, and I remember I was actually just telling um, somebody the other day that even when I was little, they used to be like, "Hey, you should be a lawyer or a reporter," because I used to always ask questions. I always was curious. So it made sense that psychology and personal development and human development and the way we think was an interest of mine.
Yeah, so once again, we're talking about being black men in Bookstagram as being a small few. My time being in psychology, whether that be in the classroom, in class,
Mm-hmm.
or actually in the field working for different companies and different iterations of psychology, is most time a very female dominant space.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys that are there is not that many black guys there,
Yeah.
right? I'm most time one of the only guys on the staff for a lot of
Yeah.
companies I work for. So a lot of the parents they come and they ask for a black counselor specifically, like, well, Sean,
Yeah.
because we kind of a rare commodity. So what's your experience been like when it comes to that in psychology?
The same thing, man. I actually just had this conversation with my old therapist that, I remember when I was looking, it was important for me to find a black therapist, because, specifically a male therapist, because I wanted somebody that looked like me, that had the same background, they had the same struggles or could, identify with the same struggles that I had. And I remember when I searched for one, it was two brothers, and this was in Memphis, Tennessee, which is a highly populated for black
Yeah,
people. And it was only two, maybe three black counselors. And I just literally had a conversation with him last week, and he's like, look, it's still the same. And, and going even back even further, I remember even when I graduated from college, I remember it was maybe, I know two other black men, but maybe three of us, maybe three, it was under five black males that graduated in my psychology class. And we talk in a class of maybe
mm.
200, and it was only
Hmm.
three black males. And it was this, it's not a space that, black males occupy. And there's still a shortage of black male therapists or people, black males in the psychology space, unfortunately. So,
I tell the story all the time. For my master graduation, big old stadium, full of all the families and everything, screaming, yelling, cowbells, the whole nine posters. I remember seeing all the SEAL graduates, man,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like I was at a Delta convention. Like I felt I was in the wrong building, like because I was like, where are the guys?
Yeah,
I wanted to
yeah,
go and high five a homeboy so bad. I'm looking around like I want
yeah.
to go and
So
like,
insistent.
man, we did it, man. We trying to, and I could. There were no guys, man.
Yeah,
There was no
man.
guys, and I realized at graduation, like this is crazy.
Yeah, man. This it's it's. I mean, it is what it is. I was about to say it's unfortunate. I mean, I think it's unfortunate
It is
from the
unfortunate.
sense of when as we get older and is I've loved that mental health and therapy has become more talked about, especially
Mhm,
in the last
mhm.
5 or 7 years.
Yes,
That there, but unfortunately, there's a lack of black males. So when black males enter the space, it's like, man, I can't find anybody. I actually have a friend. He lives out in LA, and we were talking about therapy experiences, and he was like, man, I can't find a black male, and if I can find one, he has such a backlog that I can't get to see him because it's just that he's in demand, and it's just that much of a shortage of other black men. So it's
and
unfortunate, man.
I think it's unfortunate because not just mental health, but like any of the medical practices, period. 'Cause I'm in the hospital space right now, and when I'm walking around doing my thing, I love seeing those black RN nurses, the guys, them boys
Hmm.
nurses. These guys are young doctors and things of that nature, LNs, RNs, whatever. Because I know being here in Louisiana, in particular, where it's very all field dominant. Like you want to be a young man to make money, they go to the oil field. They put you in that hard hat
Hmm.
with them boots on. You go and get full of oil and everything else, right? So it takes a special kind of person to branch off. Like now I'm going this way to do something totally different. So whenever I
Yeah,
see those guys, I make it a point always stop and engage those
yeah. See
guys
what's up to
and
him.
give those
Yeah.
guys conversation, give them a
That, yeah,
recognition.
you have
Like,
to, man, because
bro,
yeah, I mean, because it's refreshing to be like, man, okay, I see you, bro, and I get it that you're probably one of few, if not the only one. So
you know for a fact
kudos.
you're gonna imagine the scrutiny they got to go under with their family, their friends, and their community. But if you that black man with the scrubs on, that's not too common.
Yeah,
And even though we
real
salute
quick.
at the society at large, looking like, oh man, look at this dude, he got scrubs on, like kind of like down talk or shunning you, and it's like, man, I can make the same money you make. I'm not breaking my bank. I'm not hurting myself.
Yeah, wearing your tearing your body.
Tearing your
You know
body
what's
up, wear
crazy?
and tear. Come on, bro.
That kind of
That's the
reminds
unfortunate
me.
part.
That kind of reminds me of something that just kind of related that we can get off the track for a minute, but it's interrelated.
You
It's
good,
like
bro?
I had this I had this conversation when I was recently or always. I remember like growing up in a I'm 43, so I grew up going to school in the 80s
Hmm?
and up to the mid
Me
90s.
too.
That my only black male teachers were either gym teachers or like shop work. I never had like a black math teacher or a black English teacher. They were always gym teachers, black males. And I remember I was talking to somebody and they was like, you're right. I don't remember if there was a black male teacher, he was either shop or he was like a coach or something kind of trade or something, man. But I say that to say like now I'm grateful or happy that younger brothers now they have more options, that more men are in the teaching space now, because as I said, growing up, I never had one that wasn't a shop teacher or a physical education teacher.
I was blessed in junior high, seventh grade. I had this brother named Mr. Mitchell. Amazing brother, man. You could tell he
Man.
was real scholarly. The stereotypical the Scott with the glasses and the sweater vest and the
Yeah.
slacks, like he was very stereotypical what you would put in that category. But it was important for my subconscious to see that.
Yeah.
Even though in seventh grade I couldn't appreciate that, when I look back in hindsight, it was important for me to see the image of a man that was a stand-up
Yeah.
guy like that. And he taught us reading. This was a reading
Hmm.
class. It wasn't shop, it wasn't gym. He
Hmm.
was that man that really set the tone for me. Like this being a scholar thing could be. could be cool.
Yeah, yeah,
He was a cool cat. He was a good guy. He was strict about his business, but he was still at the same time. He wasn't like a
yeah,
disciplinarian. He wasn't trying to like give you a
yeah.
hard time, not trying to ride you. He was just showing you something
Showing
different.
love.
For
Yeah,
the high school
yeah,
football games, he the commentator in the booth. He in the booth. Mr. Mitchell on the
yeah.
mic in the booth. Like,
He planted that seed, man, and it like you hit the nail on the you hit the nail head on the nail that it's important to see those role models just to see like hey see somebody in that space or whatever it is to see somebody that looks like you so even if you are questioning it you can say not anymore like there's someone that did it there's a
yeah,
black
yeah,
doctor there's a
yeah,
black nurse
yeah.
black therapist a black reading teacher
Let
so
me
yeah
tell you,
man and
when I had jobs,
that's sort of that kind of plays into why I was started my Instagram page and was like black man with books because I'm like look there's not many brothers in this space and I don't want it to be lost to be like oh it ain't no brothers or it ain't many so that's why
yeah,
I'm out in front like yeah I'm
yeah,
a black man with books
yeah,
like
yeah,
period
yeah.
like
This is why it's important representation, right? I had certain jobs in the past that required me to wear scrubs. I would
hmm
wear my scrubs outside of work, like going to the store. This, that.
hmm
I know for a fact where I live at, average black boy going to the store, you see your mom in them in scrubs, you might see your aunts in scrubs, you might see your babysitter in them in scrubs, some other lady in scrubs, your homeboy mama. You're not really seeing no guys wearing scrubs where I
yeah
live at. Not many, not black men. So I want you to see a regular everyday guy with scrubs. I'm playing basketball, my class with scrubs on sometimes.
man
You can still get it with these scrubs
yeah
on.
you just
I'm gonna still give it to you with these scrubs on. Get my little top off, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's
you
dope
seeing a real everyday guy doing
yeah
something different. And I
yeah
think that that's
changes
important.
the narrative man
I've even done speeches at schools with my scrubs on.
yeah just to
That's my wardrobe choice for that day for this speech. I want to go in front of this class with scrubs on.
Man, that's dope. I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
it's important, man. It's important. Yeah, bro. So let's transition a little bit, right? So I know you a Kappa man, right?
Yes,
Kappa
sir.
man, the Newts, right? I just had Founders Day recently, a few weeks ago, I believe it was, right?
January 5th.
January the 5th. Let's not forget that, right? So tell me the importance to you of being a part of a fraternity like that, what you've gained from that experience, what came along with that experience, like why you made that choice. I'm more than sure a brother like yourself probably had a plethora of options to choose from. You chose the Cowboys. Tell me about that whole situation.
Man, for me, the primary premise or one of the fundamental premises the cap is built on is achievement, and that's something that I identify with that, they're about achievement in every field of human endeavor. So whatever it is that you do, do your best to achieve. And that's something that I identify with. And, at the time in undergrad, the brothers in my yard, they were about their business. They were always putting on community events. They
Mhm.
were, helping doing student events. So not only, of course there was a bit of party and however, it just wasn't like, yeah, we just here to party. It's like, nah, we can do both. We're going to take care of our business first so we can have a good time later. And that's just something that, identify with. And, what I gained from it was brotherhood. I grew up an only child, so I always cherished, male friendships. That's always been something that was important to me. So I gained, a brotherhood. I gained great mentors. And actually two of my mentors when I was in high school were Kappa men. So, the seed was already planted. So it just made sense that, I became, a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, man. So, I think that's to answer your question, man. Just about being about achievement and just gaining that brotherhood.
It's crazy you mentioned being the only child. I'm an only child as well. We got so many points that are alike. It's like
What?
sad.
Okay.
This whole interview was like I'm seeing the mirror of myself almost. Like the differences, the psychology thing, the job experience. I'm sure, like a lot of things you're saying is like pretty much
Yeah, man.
it's like a mirror match. This is crazy, crazy. But no, but salute to the Kappas, salute to all the
Yeah,
fraternities,
man.
all the sororities. Um, I never been a part of one myself. I have
Hmm.
been asked by different guys, man, Sean, come and do this and that. It wasn't my choice, but I do always respect what they do.
That's,
And once
that's
again,
what's
being
up.
a history guy, looking at a lot of the greatest people of our history, they were
Yeah, we're
most time a
members of
part of
fraternities.
some,
Yeah,
you know, fraternity or sorority of some sort. Man, so I understand the importance of these organizations and societies and things like that.
yeah, man.
Just to be a part of that lineage got to be incredible,
Hmm.
incredible, right? So I saw one of your posts you made recently. You had a big, huge book, the Kappas, I believe. You were
Yeah,
organizing your book, so you got the big old Kappa book I saw. That's
yeah, the
incredible,
history
man.
of Kappa Alpha Psi. Yep.
Incredible, incredible.
That's funny because that was outside of, of course, the required reading in college. That was the only book that I personally read, that I was like, I have to read this, so I want to read this in college. So that's why that book was special to me because I actually found it a few years ago. I was like, man, I forgot that I had it. It was tucked away in the boxes, and I was like, man, it's still in great condition.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, that was,
yeah.
it goes through the whole history
Mhm,
of the
mhm,
fraternity, and
yeah.
I read it page to page in college, and that was, like I
Good
said,
time,
the only book outside of my required studies that I
mhm,
read in
good time.
college.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got a book at the crib. It's a book on the history of the deltas, right?
Okay.
But in the beginning of the book, they give you a history of like all the societies, not just
It's-
the deltas, and then it branches off, of course. But you see in like why they started these societies, why that was important at
mhm.
that time, and once again, why I love being a history buff so much. I love studying like the late 1800s, early 1900s, like how life was at that time around
Yeah,
Reconstruction
man.
and after that. But like our people felt so much importance, like you said, on achievement, on excellence, how they
Hmm.
carried themselves. You get the old pictures, you can see the old pictures,
Yeah, they
how they
suited up.
dressed,
Yeah,
how they
man.
carried themselves, how they presented themselves. They had a high academic focus.
Standard.
That was
Yeah,
the
man.
standard.
Hmm.
How many of these folks just knew like Greek and Latin, all these other languages, like so fluently, man?
Yeah.
Like, there's a movie came out recently, the brother Jonathan Majors, shout out to him, Jonathan Majors. It's called Devotion, right? And it's
Yeah, that's
around
the
World,
airplane movie, right?
yes, around World
Okay.
War II. True story, by the way, right? I won't spoil the movie, not my point. But a certain scene in the movie, they're in France.
Hmm.
Him and his fellow guys, they all dressed up, going out in the town, right? And they went to a certain establishment, and the doormen, some French guys at the front, like, no, you can't get in, kind of thing. The brother starts speaking to the guy in his ear in fluent French.
What?
All of his white, counterparts looking kind of like
I
where they
didn't know you
come
could speak.
from. And he said he went to a school in rural Mississippi and he learned French.
French. Man.
But you see how the potency of the education that we had as black people way back then in those segregated schools,
Hmm.
and most time had probably like one classroom with all these different grades in it. They were understaffed. They had to use books.
Underfunded.
But the
Yep.
potency of education at that time was, whenever I talk to the OGs, they always say whenever school was segregated, that was their best education before
Yeah,
integration.
man.
It was just
That's
so,
yeah.
it was
And
dense.
that's funny you should say that because kudos to you. You put me back on the track to I picked up I think I text you the same day and you put me back on to Du Bois and I've been reading him lately
Yeah.
and it's I have it from a fresh lens. I read it in college because it was required and for a few African American studies courses, but now as as a a grown man and as a reader, I look at it with a different set of lens and a different perspective. And it's just interesting to read his writing, look going back 100 something years of like, man, these are the struggles. These are these are the
Oh,
struggles. And this is what life was like going, speaking on the education system and the standards of education, man.
do you realize the words they were using when they was writing back then?
Yeah, man.
And reading old Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and all these older guys, the scholars, they were using words back then that I still don't hear in everyday conversation. I don't see it in
Yeah.
everyday
Yeah.
writing.
definitely, I
The
agree.
words they were using was like, man, you gotta
Hmm.
really slow down and really take the sentence in to really get what he was even saying, because it's like they're writing at
So
such a
loaded.
high. They were somewhere
Yeah,
else with their writing, man. Dr. Carter G. Woodson,
man.
all these old school, the Mount Rushmore scholars back then, man. It was just,
And it's funny. I just picked that up today and started it. Miseducation of a Negro. And
bro,
yeah, the first two chapters, I was
bro.
like, wow, like
So,
okay,
but now we finished. I'm gonna send you something after this. I'm gonna send it to you
okay,
on a personal level. But I was blessed last year in February about this time. I had the sister. Her name is Historian Bay on IG. Dr.
okay,
Littleton. She a professor over there at Clark University right now, and she oversees this historical museum in Atlanta, right? But anyway, we did a whole hour on Dr. Carter G. Woodson and his history, and
yeah,
why he started Negro History Week, and why he
this week,
started the Negro History journals and stuff like that of that time, man. Like, it's a phenomenal live we did, and you'll definitely enjoy that, reading that book right there. Let me tell you this, you might not know this. We all know the miseducation of a Negro, right? Not many people know there's also the book he wrote called The Education of the Negro.
oh really? Okay, I'm gonna put that on my
Many folks
list
know
because
that.
yeah, yeah,
They
good
got more than
stuff. I
one.
appreciate that, Jim.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. I got you. Most time in society, for some reason, we hear like a certain part of a person, and that's their whole that's their whole body of
Yeah,
work.
that's good. That's
We
that's what
never hear
sums it
the
up.
follow ups, right?
Hmm.
Like Dr. Chancellor Williams got Destruction of a Black Civilization. We all know that book. We've seen the book all the time, right? But he also has a follow up to that book. Not many folks know about.
Hmm.
So there's always these follow up books that don't get the same kind of love and press as the whatever the
Definitely.
original, whatever the book was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah. So also, you also do interviews yourself, right? I'm interviewing you right now, but you're a host as well. So
Yeah.
tell me, in this space, I love it. What got you into doing these interviews? And like, just tell me how that came about, how that came to be.
When I was thinking of, building out and, figuring out what I wanted to do with Black Man with Books, I knew I wanted to talk about books, but I also was like, you know what? It would be a great opportunity to be able to interview other authors and other people that are in the reading space. So just to pick their brain, get their perspective. Ultimately, my initial goal was just to change the narrative. I just wanted to be able to showcase that hey, there are other Black men that are authors, that are readers, that love to learn and just have those conversations because I wanted to fill that space. So that's how I got into interviewing and I, always kudos to you for, allowing me to you being one of my first interviews of, a Black author. So
Thank you very much for allowing me to be on there, right? But let me ask you a question. I think most of us that host have a dream list of like dream guests. Who are some people
oh
that you want to
man.
have on, whether it be famous or not famous, whether it be certain bookstagrammers, whether it be certain
Right.
authors? What's your dream
Okay.
list?
Off the cuff, man, that's a great question, man. I appreciate that. Let's
I
see.
love
Off the
hearing that.
cuff, who would I love to interview? I would love it's a couple people out actually. I think Robert Smith, he's a black billionaire. He's one of the black billionaires. I would love to pick his brain. Um, I would love to interview Cornell West. I feel like that would be a great intellectual conversation. I would probably need a whole day. I don't think an hour or two would be good enough to, interview him. Um, Somebody else that comes to mind, Tavis Smiley. I haven't,
Bro,
I love
bro,
Tavis Smiley. I
you
would
said
love to
Travis
interview his.
Smiley?
Yeah, man, I'm
I haven't heard
taking
that
it.
name in so long. Travis
That's
Smiley,
what I was, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, he kind
that'd be
of
a good one.
disappeared from the spotlight, but I know,
That'd be a
he's
good one.
still
Well,
a intellectual brother.
let me tell you this. I love giving little sprinkles. We just had MLK Day a couple days ago. It's Thursday, a couple days ago. He has a book called Death of a King. Like, you
Yeah,
see it
yeah,
talking about? Ever seen anybody posting that talking about? That might be one of the best MLK books I've ever
great
read.
books. Yeah,
It's Death of
yeah,
a
I'm
King.
familiar with
Travis
it because,
Smiley.
like I said, I yeah, I'm familiar with it, man, and I
Like,
love, he's very intellectual, but like I said, he hasn't been in the spotlight lately. Um, and also, if we go on Bookstagram, I would love to, get up with Reggie and the Kill. I would love to pick their
oh,
brains
yeah,
because
them guys, man.
they're like for me, they're like the
Highlight.
Nas and the Jay-Z
Yeah,
of Black
yeah,
Bookstagram.
yeah. I give them that. And
Because,
man, myself, I give them that. Yes, they are
yeah,
the trailblazers, the forerunners. One of my friends put me on to them. They was like, you know what, Sean? I think you would like these dudes right here. I'm like, let's see what's up with it.
yeah.
And immediately
And
we all hit it off.
last but not least, to keep to answer your question, somebody famous that I would love to interview is Nas. I would love to
Yes.
just sit down with him and pick
Mhm.
his brain because
Yes.
he's a very I love him because and he's an intellectual. What
Yeah.
people don't realize that his content is out of this world. I give Jay his credit. He my favorite rapper too. However, Nas, I
Woo!
think, can out on the intellectual level
Yeah.
any given day of the week.
Yeah. So when it comes to Nas and being back to Bookstagram, I think Nas is a good example of the power of books because education and knowledge, intellect
Hmm.
goes beyond the halls of academia, right? Like I think Nas is like a high school dropout or something like that when it comes to academics. A lot of these
Yeah,
guys, Jay-Z, a lot of these guys, when you hear them talk in the interview, you can tell these guys are well-read guys.
yeah, yeah,
These
yeah.
guys
They're
who are at the
educated.
old bookstores in the hood, at the OGs in their corner in their life, feeding certain things to them. You can tell certain guys you hear him talking. I know what he reading.
Yeah,
I know what he
definitely.
watching. I know what he on.
I agree.
Yeah, not Nas is like that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So when it comes to interviewing, who are some people that you watch? Because we all watch certain people and we all take certain nuggets and tidbits. Who are some folks in the interviewing space that you watch, whether it be podcast hosts or TV hosts
For
or
podcasts,
anyway?
I've been watching a lot of Earn Your Leisure. I love what Rashad
I
and
like
them are
those guys.
doing. They are excellent interviewers.
Yes, they are.
Um, it's a guy named David Sands. I think his Sleep is for Suckers.
I know
He's
something
on
about.
he's on Instagram and in podcast space, and he's an excellent interviewer. He knows to get to the bottom of a question. And there's a brother from man, I don't his name is I can't think of his name, but he's a brother. He works for the New York Times because I saw him. He interviewed Jay-Z one time. Brother with glasses. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he was a great interview as well. He did, great questions, and I always got to give, love to Charlie Rose, the dude that used to do the inside the screen actors, inside the screens. I think his name is Charlie Rose, but whoever used to do the inside the actors, he used to always do great interviews. He could just break down information and get things out of people. I loved him.
Yeah, yeah. The being in the interviewing space, man, is like back to reading again, right? I think you learn the power of a good question
Yeah.
and how to extract the most out of your guest. So never, I'm watching the interview now. I see it different because it's like, if you ever see a bad interview, quote unquote, most times it's because the interviewer in the driver's seat, the way they pose the question can determine everything.
Yeah,
Now, of
I
course,
agree.
sometimes you get a wild card guest that's kind of like off the rails, like Kanye with somebody. You never know what they're gonna say. But those are kind of like outliers. But most normal conversation interviews, the host is always setting it up a certain way. And if you
Hmm.
don't do it the right way, it could go any kind of way. So I'm gonna learn the power
Oh,
of watching interviews.
how could I forget the goat Oprah? Like I'm sorry, I just thought about like, yo, I gotta mention Oprah because I mean, we grew up watching her and she's still relevant. So
Yeah, facts. Super facts, man. Super facts. Yes, it is. So recently you talked about you said earlier tonight of your own therapist that you have, right? So we're not going into your individual therapy, of course not. That's confidential. We ain't doing nothing like that. But my question is, talk about black men in therapy and Like you said before, for the past 5 years, it's more prevalent now. It's talked about
Yeah.
more openly now. You're seeing rappers and athletes talk about it in the open space now. Talk about therapy as a black man and the importance of that for the community.
Man, it is. I can't stress enough that going to therapy was the single best decision that I ever made in my life. I at a certain point I used to regret that I didn't do it sooner, but it happened when it was supposed to, and I just think it's very, very, very necessary. I think it's necessary for everyone, but it's specifically black men because unfortunately we've been taught and we've been shown that hey, shut up, don't cry, you're not allowed to have emotions, and that we see the backs, the what's the word I'm looking for, we see the negative effects of that. We see the hyper-aggression, we see the violence in the streets, and we just see it. We look, this all goes back to mental health, so I think it is very important. I'm a big advocate of it, and that's another, goal and mission of my page and my brand and my podcast is just to talk about it because I always run across brothers. Actually, just recently, I crossed paths with a brother and he was, I was telling him I had a podcast and I told him what it was about, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be promoting therapy and mental health,
Yeah.
and his first response was like, man, that's pretty dope. I always thought about going to therapy. However, he went into the reasons why. He was, he didn't feel comfortable talking to someone, or he didn't want to talk to someone that wasn't black. And he had all these reasons. And I sat with him for a minute and just broke that down of like, bro, like, I'm telling you, it not only will it change your life, it will, change your world, and I just gave him, my experience of like, look, I was the same way where I was like, nah, also growing up in the black community, like, oh, you pray about it. You pray about it. You take it to God. That's all you need. And like, yo, sometimes, you know, God ain't enough. Like sometimes you got to talk to a human being, man. So for me, man, I can't stress it enough that it's very important to get that clarity, to get that professional. And the best way that I love to describe it is like, if you want to if you want to get in shape and you want to build muscles, you'll go get a physical trainer. And that's accepted and people talk about that. However, your most important muscle is your mind. So why wouldn't you go get someone who is, professionally trained, has the perspective, the tools to help you change and, build your mind. I always say the analogy of, a therapist is just the therapist to the mind is to the mind what a personal trainer is to the body. So it's the same thing.
You just said something important about the therapist being trained with the mind and behavior and things like that, right? And so many people out there in the world, they feel like I don't need a therapist. I'm gonna talk to my homegirl about this. I'm gonna talk to my
Yeah,
mama about this. I'm gonna talk to Uncle so and so about this. And sometimes you can do that, but a lot of times those people are not trained to
yeah,
understand certain diagnoses. They don't understand certain
traumas. Yeah,
traumas. They don't understand the best practices to treat these things. They don't understand all this stuff. Like you said, personal training. A person goes to a lot of schools to understand the body to be a personal
hmm,
trainer. Trust me, I've done it. Same thing with the mind. They go to school for a long time for a reason.
yeah, yeah.
They don't just hand those out, right? How would you think that your homeboy from work, I'm gonna just go talk to him about this stuff? Like, no, it makes no
Right.
sense. But people
Yeah,
really operate like that.
yeah, man. But like I said, piggybacking off of what you just said, man. It's good to have someone to talk to, but sometimes to vent. There's a difference between venting to get it off your chest or
Hmm.
to get it out your mind versus talking to a clinician or a trained professional that can help you get through it. And like I said, not to say that somebody can't. They can give you perspective and will work for them and be able to drop some gems. But sometimes you need that professional help. They're like, hey, I'm experiencing this trauma, this anxiety, or this happened in my life, and I'm trying to make sense of it and work through it. That you
And
need that professional.
also in our community. It's a gift and a curse, right? I think we always pride ourselves on our endurance. We pride ourselves on how much we can
Hmm.
handle, how much we can shoulder. We can just take it on the chin. But it's like at a certain point, you can only take so much, and it's bound to
Yeah,
manifest
yeah,
some kind of way, either on your physical body, your health, or it's gonna manifest
yeah,
in your reactions and your relationships. It's gonna manifest some kind of way if there is no release
yeah.
valve
I agree.
to alleviate that.
I agree, man.
Yeah, yeah. I love how much athletes and celebrities talk about it more because unfortunately, in this world we live in,
Likewise.
the celebrities kind of move the needle, right? So
Hmm.
a person like Megan Thee Stallion or LeBron James, somebody, if they mention therapy and going to school, reading books, that's a lot more weight than the President Joe Biden talking about that,
Yeah, because
or
people look up
a
to them.
pastor, or a lawyer, or some politician. These celebrities have more power than them.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad seeing the amount of folks that's openly talking about therapy in their songs and in their interviews and just, on certain platforms they're talking about it. So the average everyday person say, you know
Likewise.
what? If Kyrie Irving can do that, or Kanye West can do that, I'm gonna go and do some therapy too. If that's what it takes to get the help, then so be it. Kudos.
Yeah, man.
Facts. Yeah. So you made a post recently I found very interesting about organizing your bookshelf. One of my recent curiosities is understanding people rhyme and reason to how they organize their shelves. I love hearing the different perspectives and the different ways it could be done. So tell me, how in the world is your beautiful bookshelf back there arranged?
So, man, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I used to, I would say probably, I think I rearranged in the last month and a half, and I just had stuff everywhere. But I'm still trying to figure out a system. But the system that works for me now to, kind of keep it organized is like the top shelf is all books that I kind of, because I'm always reading. I'm reading 3 or 4 books at a time, so I may get a page here, page there. Those are books that I'm reading or I started that I haven't finished. So if I'm in the mood like, hey, I want to read a biography or something, those are books that I kind of started. The second shelf is all books that I've read that I kind of reference, because every day on my page I post a quote of the day, like they're like an inspirational
I
quote
love
from
that.
like
I love it.
self-help books. I'm always pulling from like my favorite books, or books or page or books that I find inspirational. That's what that is. This shelf, the third shelf, are it's kind of split up. It's books that I've kind of read that they don't quite fit in the self-help, and books that I've kind of started. So it's like a hodgepodge. On the bottom, those are all biographies
Mhm.
and like economics and finance books. And on the very, very, very bottom shelf is kind of a hodgepodge. I have my African American authors, and then it's also like spiritual books, and this
Mhm.
any this is a hodgepodge of books.
Yeah,
So I'm still trying to figure it out,
yeah,
because as I said, right now it's so self help and personal development that I couldn't really, I didn't want to do like, habits and, meditation and this and that. So I kind of just trying to figure it out, man. So if
I love it.
next year when we, talk again, it'll be different.
Next year. That's funny. No, I love it because I love going on the gram and just scrolling and seeing people. Some folks have their bookshelves like color coded. I always find that
Yeah,
fascinating. They
more
got the
power to them,
colors.
man. I
Um,
don't have the
yes,
patience for that.
no, me neither. Me neither. It's beautiful to see as far as how it looks, but as far as the functionality of it, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
some of us have, of course, alphabetical order. Of course, you got genres. I mean, some of the stereotypical ways to do it, but they have different variations. I'm like, man, this is creative, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, man.
Love seeing it. Mine, just a little small rundown on my bookshelf. Um, seeing the top of my head, the first shelf is all Africa, everything dealing with the
Okay.
continent of Africa specifically. The next two shelves, you go more into like your social justice, um, black studies, criminal justice, things of that nature, right? Now your next two shelves, you're going into fiction. I'm going to my fiction shelf. Very
Okay.
bottom shelf, we're going to all my references. I love reference material. That being like,
Okay.
uh, I love going to like book fairs and old like used bookstore sales and get the big old huge
Yeah, the thick
thesauruses
joints.
and
Yeah.
dictionaries and different variations, vocabulary builder books, thesauruses, encyclopedias, which is kind of rare these days, Britannicas, things like that.
Man, that's
Things
what's
like
up, man. Like I said, you just and it's funny you should say that. I was book shopping not too long ago, and they had like a nice thesaurus and dictionary, and I almost got it, but then I was like, right now I just use my phone, and I'm like, now you just inspired me. Like, you know what? I don't have a physical dictionary at thesaurus because I've just been relying on my phone. But there's something to be said about like an old school classic, paperback or physical
that.
thesaurus and dictionary.
So we mentioned Malcolm X earlier in the conversation about how inspirational his story was. And one of the most standout points to me about Malcolm X was the whole thing about him reading the dictionary in jail.
Mhm.
So I told myself 6, 7 years ago, I said, you know what? I admire Malcolm X so much. If he could read a dictionary in jail, how could I not read dictionaries as a free walk around man, right?
Man, yeah,
Now it took me years to do it. I'm gonna tell you that. I didn't do it like fast. It took me
yeah.
years to do it. But like the beginning of the pandemic, the first year of the pandemic, I finally finished the whole dictionary front to back.
What?
Definitely,
That's
definitely proud
dope,
about that.
bro.
Definitely
That's
proud about
that's
it.
some heavy. That's a heavy some heavy lifting. So kudos to you, bro. Like I don't think I'm that ambitious to be like, yeah, I'm gonna read the whole dictionary. Truthfully, I know myself.
Well, you mentioned curiosity earlier and the power of curiosity. I love to give myself these little micro challenges where it's like it doesn't matter to anybody else on the planet. I know that,
Hmm.
but this particular thing matters to me.
Yeah,
And it's a feather in my hat. It's a notch on my belt to my own
yeah.
confidence if I complete this thing and have the discipline to do it. And so I find different things to do like that, across my life. I've done stuff like
Man, that's what's up, man. Like I said, you inspire me to push myself in other areas. Actually, you did. Like I said, last time we talked, you was talking about thick books, and I told you you mentioned that every year you pick one monstrous book, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start doing that. Like I said, I'm reading Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, and that's
that.
probably every bit of 600-700 pages, which is very that's a big book to me, but I'm giving myself, I got
Yeah,
12 months to do it. So it's not like I gotta do it in one sitting.
right. Um, and back to my bookshelf to finish it out real quick before we move on. So on the next bookshelf, that's one shelf. The next bookshelf is more social justice kind of thing. The first two shelves, but then toward the bottom, we go into all my biographies. I love biographies.
Hmm.
All my biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, things of that nature. And then the very better bottom shelf on the bookshelf, that's all self help, personal
Okay.
development, self help, motivational, inspirational, stuff like that. That's all the last shelf. That's my two
Real
bookshelves.
Real quick, I have a question for you, man. I was
Yes,
debating it, and I thought I would, maybe you can relate, man. Like I was recently looking at my shelf, and I was like, you know what? It's time for me to purge and kind of give books away because I know there's certain books I'm not going to read again. How do you feel about that? Like, giving books away or purging? Do you ever do that, or you keep everything?
no, so that's actually a great question. Thanks for that. You being the host that you are. So I told you earlier in the conversation, like I had the first 10 years reading fiction, right? In those first 10 years reading books, I gave away everything.
Oh
I don't have any of
wow!
those books. Because the minute I would finish reading the Eric Jerome Dickens book, it's like, man, I love it so much. I want you to read it too.
Right, you
I
want to
love
give it?
milking my
Yeah.
coffee, for example. Check this out. I'm excited. I want you to read it too. Forget going by it, man. Take this. Tell me what you think about
Hmm.
it. Right? That was 10 years of that. And then later on in my reading journey, when it changed to self-help, personal development, now I'm starting to keep more books, but I'm still excited about it. I
Yeah.
still want to give some away. Right? Now at this
Hmm.
point in my life, like current speaking, I keep a lot of my books, but I probably still give away 40% of my books.
Man,
Out of all the books you might see me with, I give away way more books you could ever think about. So, for example,
that's
me being the author myself, when somebody buy one of my books, they buy What's Your Kick, I always throw in 2 or 3 other books in there. Always.
okay.
That's like standard. Or if one of my friends doing a book swap with me between us, I throw in 2, 3 other books. So I'm always
Okay.
kind of, so I'm continuously always doing that, right? And then the guys that I mentor, when I see them in person, I always show up with a stack of 5 or 6 books. Like, man, take that. So to answer your
That's
question, I'm
what's up,
always giving away books. Always giving
man.
away books. So I feel like the way God blessed me is like the more books I give away, I got wonderful Bookstagram friends I've accumulated over the years, and they get all these art copies of books from all these companies, right? So they be like, look, Sean, I got these many art copies of books that I don't want no more. You want them? I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, so it
So
comes back around.
I
Yeah,
might give a young brother a stack of books. And man, take this. They're like, oh, Mr. Sean, thanks so much. It means so much to me. You know, they crying almost. And then the next day or the next week, the postman come with the box.
you
I got like
get
15
fresh
more
ones.
books. So it's like a continuous cycle. My bookshelf
Right.
is like a cycle. So I got one particular, it's in my storage right now, matter of fact. I'll send it to you later if you want it. It's a picture I took during the pandemic. I call it the To My Grave stack. This
Okay.
stack of books I will never loan out.
Never give up.
I will
Gotcha.
never give up. The rest of my books, you can have them. But these
Hmm.
particular books, you can't get them.
Okay.
The To My Grave stack.
I like it, bro.
Yeah, yeah. Sure. So before we get out of here, man, you mentioned on your last show you did with me about the possibility of writing yourself. So tell
Hmm.
me more about how serious you are about the possibility of writing. Is it kind of a thing you're dabbling with, or you kind of really want to do it? And then tell me if you were to write, what would you possibly write about?
Man, I'm very serious about writing. Like I said, I that's one of my goals for the year is just to write. Like I said, and I, personally now I write probably like 4 times a week. I write for 30 minutes. Just, open my laptop and I just type with no agenda for right now to get my feet wet, to get it back into that writing space. But
I
I'm
love
very serious about writing. It's something that I always wanted to do, but prior to probably the last 3 or 4 months, I was like, nah, like it seems too daunting. It's trying to get it published and who's going to buy it and this and that. But in meeting brothers like you and the other brother Clifford that I've met, you all have inspired me like, bro, everybody has a story and everybody can benefit from your story. So you need to get it out there. So I've been, taking writing serious, especially over the last 19 days, every week as I said, 3 or 4 times, 30 minutes. And what I would write about, I think this is where I get, I'm still trying to figure it out. I know one of them is going to be my personal story, going through, what I went through, going through therapy and, coming out of therapy of, how I got into reading. I think it's a combination, if not several books about my story. And I have another idea of writing, like a guide to reading self-help books, because since I've read so many that like, hey, it would be pretty interesting if I could write a book of how to read and pick, or about different self-help books, because it's so many classics out there where you could just break them down. So I'm kind of playing with those ideas to answer your
I love it.
question.
I love it. Definitely talking to you. The past 2 conversations that we've had, you definitely got a lot to give and
Hmm.
tell. You have a lot to say that's
Yeah.
worthy of being impressed. So we can all get some of your gems you have to give us. But when it comes to that self help idea, that's interesting because back to being a well read person, there's actually a book called How to Read a Book, right?
Yeah, I actually have it. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And they break down, for those that don't know, they break down per genre how to go about reading these certain kind of books and journals and academic papers and
Yeah.
non, it breaks down into categories, right? But the self-help piece you just said, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, and,
It's
and
very
and I
interesting.
think the angle I want to approach it is for other brothers, other people of color, because one thing I think and this is a whole different topic and conversation that we probably should have at another time because we could be here for hours. I remember recently I was watching something and a brother said that he was reluctant to read self help written by white authors, and he broke
I'm
it
glad you
down,
said
and I was like,
it. Glad you said it.
okay, that's interesting. I could see both sides of it.
I can too.
However, that being said, I would like to write a guide from a black male's perspective of like, hey, I read these. This is how I read them. This is how I benefited from them, regardless of whether they were right. I mean, white or black. Like the information is the information.
And this is the double-edged sword to the conversation, right? To this conversation. Because you mentioned earlier within the therapy conversation about how a lot of people feel like, man, I want to get another black man as a therapist or a black person, period.
Hmm.
Understand my plight, understand my background, et cetera, right? I understand that, I get it. But I live my life, me, Sean P, nobody else. I just want good information.
Yeah.
I don't care if a purple person said it or a fluorescent green person.
Hmm.
If your information is intact, you cross the T's, you dot the I's, all your data is correct, everything lined up, everything is scholarly put together correctly,
Hmm.
I don't care wwho said it. If it's
Yeah.
tried and true to work,
Likewise.
I'm a very result driven person. I'm not caught up on who's saying it. 'Cause especially these days and these times, a lot of folks that look like us is saying a lot of wrong stuff.
Right.
A lot of wrong stuff being said right now by folks that look like us. So I'm not
Yeah.
caught up on who's saying it. I want right, correct information, right? So in
Hmm.
self-help, we go down that rabbit hole, you're getting more and more black people in that space now.
Yeah,
Most
definitely.
times it's probably like a celebrity writing self-help, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But a large part of the genre is probably going to be white people,
Yeah.
especially the Mount Rushmore guys, Napoleon Hill,
Yeah. Jim Rohn.
Dale Carnegie, Jim Rohn, John
Yeah.
Maxwell, Tony Robbins. We can keep going. Those guys kind of set that platform up many years ago, right? But if the method is tried and true to work, why would I go against what works?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, as you said, the results are there. And like I said, I mean, but on the flip side, I could see how,
I get it.
you
I
could
get
be
it.
not, you could be reluctant of like, and I
Give me
think the
one
way,
pause real quick. Something just happened. One
yeah.
second. I'm good. I didn't want to lose you. Keep going.
Now you good. We can edit it out.
I'm good.
And he posed a question. I mean, he had a good point. And I couldn't even discount him. He was like, you know what? Sometimes he was reluctant to read self help by a white person or a white man because he was like, they come from a place of privilege. Like he's a white man. American society is set up for them. So of course he
Well,
could have he could, it could work for him or he could come from a place of perspective. So I was like, I get it. I get both sides of it, and I was like, yo, that's a conversation to be had. Like I said, we could probably, we would need a whole episode to
yeah,
really go through the
yeah,
nuances. So
we ain't got to even do all of that. But like, yes, whoever said it, I totally get it. I'm not dissing the brother whoever said it, right? And I love whenever Shannon Sharp says he ain't the one that made the phrase, but two things can be true at the same time, right? We ain't got to say either or. Both of those things are true, right? But I'm big on universal principles, right?
hmm.
Even whenever I write my own self-help books, I'm a self-help author myself. I'm trying to specifically write something to where I don't care what your economic situation is. This thing
Hmm.
works. This is a law. I don't care your racial background. This thing works. I'm writing very universally when I write my books. I don't write quote unquote black books.
Yeah.
I don't care your background. You read this book and do this particular principle, you're going to yield a result, right? So a lot of the guys that we're talking about, Tony Robbins, all these guys, your privilege or not becomes irrelevant to these universal principles.
Right.
I
I
would say to the
agree.
person, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that is, man. I totally enjoy your time. I respect your time. Thanks for
Man,
coming. My first
thank
ever
you.
YouTube guest in the YouTube space. Hopefully a lot more guests to come on Sean P Presents. We in the building. I totally enjoyed it. Wonderful guest. William,
Hey,
brother.
thanks for having
We
me,
need some
bro.
more
I
shows together,
enjoyed
bro. We are kindred spirits, bro. We need more shows
it. Hey, man,
together
we like I said,
anytime you want.
we gonna have more. We gonna have more,
I'm telling you
definitely. And
right now.
I appreciate you inviting me on,
Yes,
bro, and taking the time to interview me. I
yes.
really greatly appreciate it.
I'm giving you an open invitation right now. Whenever you want to come up to Sean People's in, man, Sean, look, I got an idea, I got a
Bet,
topic.
bet.
I'm gonna say, man, give me a time in the day. Whenever you want me on
All
your
right,
show,
man.
say, Sean, I got a topic. Man, give me a time in the day. I'm not gonna ever tell you no.
Sure. Bet. All right.
I'll tell you no.
I appreciate
You got
that.
that stamp for me, my brother. I appreciate you. Thanks for your time. Anybody listening, it will be on YouTube tonight. It will be on Anchor. It will be on Spotify in the podcast space. We're going on a new endeavor, man. We got a new platform. We got new merchandise. We got new books coming out. 23, man. Taking over.
Do it.
Yeah, bro. Thank you very
All
much.
right,
Salute.
bro. Have a good one.